Alright, okay, good evening everyone. Welcome to today's session. Okay, so as usual, we'll jump into the markets, highlight some of the opportunities available, and do a quick Q&A session as well, okay? So let's do a quick review of last week. Last week, we do have a couple of important data that came in. Okay, we had the Canadian side of things that come in a little bit of a mix. So we did see the CAD actually whipsaw a little bit during the particular event itself. But for now, I think the observation over here is that the Canadian seems to be weakening. Okay, and of course, the dollar seems to be strengthening as well. Of course, couple that on Friday, Canadian retail sales has been pretty weak, right? So that's why we're seeing that the CAD continue weaken as we're speaking today. Okay. Other than that, last week was generally more of a quiet side. We don't really have a lot of significant data except for the CAD side of things. Now, if you look into this week here, we do have a couple of things. First thing here is of course the Bank of Canada rate statement happening on Wednesday. Okay. So that's going to be crucial. You can see that the market has already expected a initial rate cut. I think based on last week data, there's a good possibility we might see a cut. Even if we don't see a cut, it might be a very, very dovish tone from Bank of Canada. Okay, because the data that were released last week is not as great. Okay, so perhaps we'll start to see that transition. Okay. Later part of the week on Friday, we have the core PC price index coming in from the US side of things. But other than that, there isn't much, right? So this week is generally pretty quiet. The main focus on the data side would very much just be on the Bank of Canada, right? So with that, let's jump into the charts over here and talk about some of the opportunities available. Now, the dollar index itself, we are expecting a bullish bias. Okay, so what we've seen is that the market came down, tagged the bottom of this entire channel, very nice and clean structure. Nice little reaction here as well when the market bounced up. So if you can see a tiny bit of a consolidation moving forward, we'll expect this to go up and potentially retest the top of the channel or even maybe breaking out of it. Right, so with that said, I'm going to be bullish on this. From Elliott wave perspective, we have completed a 3-wave cycle very nicely. Nice decent reaction off the bottom of the channel as well, so there's no reason to not look out for the buy opportunities, right? Of course, the confirmation here is that the market gave us a corrective pullback, then that will be a decent buy setup. Of course, if you translate that to the euro, then that will be the inverse of it. Okay, so euro over here we can see very nice little 3-wave structure. Didn't really test the top of it, but it came very, very close, right? And again, we are not looking for perfection in the market. I think with that kind of reaction, little impulsive move from there. Okay, we do see a little bit of a diagonal structure here as well. Momentum push. So if you can get a corrective pullback here, we are looking at sell side. Okay, so this one here again, as long as price remains below this high, we'll be expecting downside potentially to retest the bottom of the channel or even breaking out of this. Okay, so euro dollar bearish bias. GBP USD is the same as well. Okay, at least for the short term, right? We're kind of expecting a decent pullback after this impulsive move, right? And internally, we are also looking at this as a potential 5-wave structure, with the 5th wave ending as a diagonal 2 and a pretty impulsive drop. Okay, so going forward, if you can get a corrective pullback, then obviously we're expecting one more drop to complete a simple ABC, and then from there, perhaps one more push back up to complete the bigger structure that looks something like this. Right? So this week, short term, if we can get a pullback, we'll be expecting one more push towards a target at 2830. Okay, so that's on GBP USD. Aussie dollar here, we are bearish bias. The market has came down quite impulsively, very, very significant. Okay, so we are essentially bearish bias, but we want to wait for a pullback first, right? This is impulsive in nature. If you can get a pullback, then obviously we'll be looking for one more drop. So this drop over here may potentially come back down towards the 50 and even maybe lower at 618 to correct this move that may have completed as a previous cycle. Okay, so major pairs seems to be pretty much aligned with the dollar index, right? So dollar index we're bullish bias, and some of this major pairs here we're looking at sell side opportunities. Okay, the clearest of all is definitely going to be the pound dollar, right? Because this impulsive move here did manage to break this low, giving us that extra confirmation. Euro dollar did give us an impulsive move, but we have yet to break that low, to be honest. So among these two, the pound dollar seems to be a little bit more confirmation, right? A little bit more convicted to the downside itself. Aussie dollar obviously is down, but it had came down quite a bit, so I wouldn't want to be selling into the impulse leg, right? So those are the major pairs. Dollar CAD here, we are kind of breaking the top, right? So this will probably need to reassess. We did not get the impulsive break to the downside. So the bias itself may need to be adjusted a little bit. But I don't want to be overly I don't want to adjust it too early, because what we can also observe over here is this can be simply a consolidation. Okay, and obviously the market can still come back down, right? So dollar Canadian, what we'll be looking at here is potentially from a bearish bias, maybe we'll be shifting this to a neutral bias tomorrow, right? And just essentially giving the market more time and see how it's going to develop before jumping back into a clear direction. Okay, so overall right now, I'll probably just suggest shift it to a neutral point of view, and then let the market develop into a clearer pattern before we come back. Okay, USD JPY short term I'm bullish. Okay, the short term move on bullish bias over here is simply as a pullback. Okay, so we had the market moving up for an extended period of time, and then eventually last week we did see a impulsive drop, which is something that oftentimes after significant extended rally, the pullback can come down quite aggressive, right? Now this pullback here develops in a very clear 5-wave structure too. So right now we're expecting a decent pullback. Okay, so short term, I'm actually interested in the upside, right? Now it's not going to be a huge move back up, but if you're looking at this scale here, from where we are potentially going towards 158.7, that's like 200 pips. Pretty okay for a short term kind of intra-week trade setups, right? And that's what I'm looking at. And then after that, when the market come back to this zone, we'll be then focusing on another sell trade after which. Okay, so dollar yen, so happen today we also have this trade triggered. Okay, moving quite nicely so far. Personally, for me, I've shift stops to break even. A little bit more active in the management of this trade because, again, I've highlighted, right, we're kind of trading the pullback. It's not like trading with the trend, we're kind of a little bit against the trend, right? So I'm a little bit more active in managing that trade. Okay, so that's on dollar yen. Gold here is definitely bearish. Okay, the momentum is very, very strong to the downside. I did manage to catch a gold trade here, but it's a very, very short term trade, right? I mean, if I hold that, that would have been like a easily 4 to 5 hour return. But I like to just have the target about 1:2, and then if it hits it, so be it. I'll get out, look for the next opportunity, right? But the overall direction on gold, I think, will be still downside, right? So this one here, there's no reason to be buying it. I think, maybe short term we're gonna see some kind of pullback, but overall direction right now is definitely bearish. Okay, and gold has a potential to reach all the way to the bottom of the channel, potentially over there as well. So yeah, keep a lookout for that, right? Crude oil, very nice trades. 2 trades here in crude oil as well, as we're looking at this, bigger pullback. Okay, One of it was catching this, coming down, and then we did a nice little pullback. Another trade, we catch this, and then coming down, hits our target. And then right now the market is kind of reaching for the 50% fit. Okay, so I think overall, the pullback may have been completed, or I would say completing soon. And that kind of gave me the perspective that from now, maybe we're not going to be looking for sell opportunity. I think short-term bearish bias is still going to be there, right? The market can still pull back and one more drop. But again, as we are getting approach nearer towards the 15.618 area, selling into this zone may not be very attractive anymore, right? Instead, what you want to see is, can we get a buy instead? Okay, to complete this as a 1, 2, 3. Okay, so that's on crude oil. I think short term here, maybe for the first half of the week, we may still get a little bit more downside, but as I mentioned, as the price comes towards this area, just be a little bit careful in selling. Okay, S&P bearish bias as well. Okay, the market seems to be a little bit extended, right? So we're kind of expecting a little bit more of a deeper pullback here. Okay, potentially right now seems to be doing this three-way structure correction, and then one more drop, right? Give us a 1, 2, 3. So short term bearish as well. Okay, we're kind of expecting that pullback after a move, right? So yeah, okay, I think the structure in some of this here is definitely very, very clear. Okay, and all you need to do is just look out for the setup. If it fulfills it, right, then you can look into entering. Yen pairs on pound and odd, not as clear as the dollar yen. Okay, so this one did not get that impulsive break of that structure, so we'll probably want to shift this to neutral as well. Okay, tomorrow I'll probably be updating some of this biases before we send out the report. But yeah, this is definitely going to be neutral. I'm not going to be selling into this because this is pretty impulsive, right? At some point in time, it's going to pull back. We'll wait for the pullback. Okay, pound yen here as well. I think probably get a pullback here. So short term, we are expecting that pullback, but again, the entry would require certain conditions to be fulfilled, right? As of now, we don't have a setup. We have a general sense of direction where the market would likely pull back, but we don't have an entry condition yet. Okay, pound Aussie continue to move up very, very strongly, so I'm going to be neutral. Of course, bullish bias, but neutral at the moment because you don't want to be buying here. Okay, wait for the pullback. Of course, you know, this seems to be pretty decent area. If you can pulse back to it there, then that would definitely be an opportunity to look for a buy. Okay, so my take is I'm not focusing on pound odd, but overall direction is generally bullish. Euro CAD also neutral. Okay, we're kind of testing the top of the channel right now. Not really a clear and decent reaction, so I'm just gonna stay out of it. Bitcoin definitely bullish, right? Very nice little reaction here. Wait for the pullback, look for the buy. Okay, very, very straightforward. Okay, just wait for the pullback, look for the buy, and of course, if you're more interested in the short term, you may even consider and see if you can get, like, you know, a sell opportunity, right? Because this on the hourly, okay, this is building into a crawl, right? I mean, you definitely would see some sort of a divergence over there. We're looking at a pullback eventually kicking in. Okay, what would be a good confirmation is to wait for price to take out this low, right? Ideally take out that low impulsively, and then you wait for the pullback to get involved in the sell for the short-term move to the downside. Okay, so the confirmation, ideally you want to wait for price to break that low first. Okay, so that's on the BTC side of things. Yeah, so overall right now, as of, you know, what we're seeing here at the start of the week, certain things I'm focusing on very much would be the major pairs. For example, like, you know, euro dollar over here. Again, this is a little bit early, but if you can get a pullback, that would be a sell opportunity. Same to pound dollar, right? I mean, this too is pretty much quite clear. Okay, clearest is actually the pound dollar, right? Because as I mentioned, okay, we have this break. Okay, the market take out that swing low, so it kind of give us the extra layer of confirmation that perhaps that reversal is there. Okay, so if you're gonna be choosing one of this to be focusing on between the euro and the pound, then the pound dollar to me, have a little bit more confirmation. Okay, yeah, the dollar yen also, but of course dollar yen here, depending on your entry setup, right? It's a counter trend. It's considered a counter trend, right? So you want to be a little bit careful on that. Okay. There are others here that we have. Probably you want to give it some time and see how the market's going to develop into a setup for you. Okay, then when you get involved in the trade. Okay, so global indices, US market, I think pretty similar in terms of S&P and the NASDAQ, right? We're kind of expecting that pullback here. After their impulsive drop, I think the market would likely do some sort of pullback and then continuation, one more move. Dow Jones here as well. Okay, kind of highlighted last week during one of the session, right? Talking about how initially Dow Jones were like diverging away from S&P and NASDAQ, right? And then eventually we got that realignment, and then right now all of them are in alignment, right? All of them are basically giving us that first push down, right? So Dow Jones over here, you can potentially look for a pullback, right? Again, if you're a bit more conservative, you probably just aim for the 50% mark here, okay, where you probably get a pullback and then one more drop, right? That would probably be something to look out for. Okay, so US equity short term can look for one more sell. German DAX, the pullback seems to be a little bit stronger than what we would ideally like to see. Okay, but this can overall still look something like this. Okay, all right, so yeah. Okay, so that's on German DAX. FTSE seems to be continuing its triangle-ish kind of like correction. Okay, so after which, if that's going to be the triangle, we are expecting one more drop. A50, potentially a leading diagonal over here. Okay, so short term, probably gonna do something like this, and then you'll be looking for a buy opportunity on A50. Okay, Hang Seng, probably not the cleanest and clearest of all, but I think the overall structure remains intact. Okay, that's the take on that. Aussie 200, we kind of get that impulsive break, okay, off this low. So potentially we're looking at the pullback starting. Okay, this pullback doesn't look very sharp, doesn't look very ideal. It's pretty sharp. You may want to be a little bit patient first. Okay, yeah, so ideally we want to see a corrective pullback, then we can get one more sell. Okay, kind of a 1 2 3. Good. Switzerland side of things, I think this overall structure remains intact, right? Probably continuing its development as a crawl, so just be patient before you kind of jump into the sell. Okay. That's on Singapore, right? So yeah, generally that's about it. AudCAD bearish. I think AudCAD is like pretty similar to Aussie dollar, right? So I think AudCAD over here, probably a little bit more downside. Yeah. Okay. Might want to keep an eye on this zone here. I think the bearish move is pretty much similar to Aussie dollar, right? So definitely focusing on the sell for Aussie CAD. Okay. Kiwi dollar bearish as well. I think this kind of impulsive move quite clear. The momentum is to the downside, but you don't want to be selling here, right? Because the market just came down. If you want to sell, wait for a pullback, then only you sell, right? Yeah. So the bias is quite clear, but you just need to wait for the setup for you to get involved in the trade. Dollar yen, can we buy now? Again, depending on your strategy, does it fulfill a condition to get involved, right? Because every trader would have a slightly different way of managing your trade, managing your risk. Okay, for me, I've already shift stops to break even, right? So to me, the buy trade on dollar yen is risk free. But if you're gonna get in now, then obviously it's not gonna be risk free for you, right? Then you need to have a clear plan on how to manage the trade, etc. Okay, so you need to definitely have a strategy and a setup, right, that fulfills your condition and criteria for you to pull the trigger. Cool. Good. Yeah, so in general, those are the things that I have. Okay. Yeah, that's about it, right? I mean, this week here, the focus is very much on some of the major pairs. Okay. For me, will be euro and the pound as of now. Then on Wednesday, we have the Bank of Canada coming in. Okay. And then from there, we'll see how the CAD is gonna perform, right? As I mentioned, this one here right now may not be the cleanest and the clearest structure, depending on how market is gonna react. We can still see some downside, right? Because this can still be a corrective pattern as a whole. 1, 2, 3, very possible. Okay, so I'm just gonna be a little bit neutral and patient on this. Good. Is it a divergence in gold? I mean, if you're talking about the bottom here, I think it's not that significant. Okay, anyway, it's just too small, right? On the H4 over there. But if you're talking about, this part here, then yeah, that's very obvious a divergent, right? Yeah, so usually for divergence, right, you can also see it in how price is developing. Okay, if the market is coming down with momentum, oftentimes you don't see a divergent because it's so clear the momentum is there. When you see something like that, then that's where you have a very high odds that you're going to see a divergent. Okay, so in this case here, while this is coming down, okay, you don't really have a very clear divergence because ideally for me, the divergence would like to see some sort of an extreme zone, right? The RSI actually prints out of the extreme, right? I would like to see something. You see here, it doesn't have any. Okay, so to me, this is not a divergent, but it's a valid pattern. Okay, yeah, hopefully that clear things up a little bit. Cool. Okay, so yep, that's it for me for this week. Do keep an eye on those things that I've mentioned. That may give you some opportunities to look into the trade for the week itself. All the best to trading, and I'll see you guys in the next session. Okay, see you guys. Bye bye.